When the world was engulfed in flames, America stood at a crossroads torn between a deep desire to remain apart and the inevitable pull toward a global conflict that threatened freedom itself. In the late 1930s, as Europe and Asia plunged into chaos, the United States found itself wrestling with a profound dilemma. The horrors of World War I were still fresh in the national memory: millions dead, economies shattered, and families torn apart. This painful legacy shaped America's foreign policy, fueling a widespread determination to avoid entanglement in another overseas war. The nation adopted a stance of strict neutrality, passing a series of neutrality acts designed to prevent involvement in foreign conflicts. Yet, the storm gathering across the Atlantic and Pacific was impossible to ignore. In 1939, Nazi Germany's invasion of Poland ignited World War II, and soon Britain and France were locked in desperate struggle against Axis powers. Though America declared neutrality, President Franklin D. Roosevelt sensed that global security and American security was at stake. Roosevelt faced a delicate balancing act. On one hand, isolationism was deeply rooted in American politics and public opinion. Many citizens believed the oceans offered a natural shield from European conflicts, and Congress was wary of any measures that could drag the nation into war. On the other hand, Roosevelt recognized the moral and strategic imperative of supporting democracies fighting against fascist aggression. To navigate this challenge, Roosevelt crafted policies that maintained official neutrality but gradually shifted America toward active support for the Allies. The first major step was the introduction of the cash and carry policy in 1939. This policy allowed Allied nations to purchase arms and supplies from the United States, provided they paid cash upfront and transported the goods themselves. By avoiding loans or American ships entering war zones, the policy kept the U.S. technically neutral while providing crucial aid. Cash and carry proved a lifeline, especially for Britain, which faced relentless German attacks and blockades. The British Navy's control of the Atlantic allowed it to safely transport American-made weapons, ammunition, oil, and food across dangerous waters. This aid bolstered the British war effort at a critical time, buying them precious months to regroup and prepare for future battles. Meanwhile, Roosevelt continued preparing the nation for the possibility of war. He pushed for increased military spending, expanded the Navy, and launched programs to train soldiers. The Selective Training and Service Act of 1940 introduced the first peacetime draft in U.S. history, signaling a shift from isolation to readiness. Despite public reluctance, Roosevelt understood that neutrality might not last. The Lend-Lease Act of 1941 marked a further escalation in support for the Allies. This program allowed the U.S. to lend or lease war materials to any country deemed vital to American defense. Unlike cash and carry, it removed the immediate payment requirement and extended aid more freely. Britain became the primary recipient, receiving tanks, aircraft, food, and raw materials essential for sustaining its fight against Axis powers. Through Lend-Lease, the U.S. became the arsenal of democracy, supplying not only Britain but also the Soviet Union after Germany invaded in June 1941. This massive industrial and logistical effort transformed America's economy, ending the Great Depression by creating jobs and boosting production. However, tensions with Japan were escalating. Japan's imperial ambitions in Asia and the Pacific threatened American interests and allies. By 1941, Japan's invasion of China and moves into Southeast Asia pushed the U.S. to impose economic sanctions and embargoes, especially cutting off oil exports vital to Japan's military. These moves deepened hostilities and set the stage for conflict. Despite efforts to avoid war, the unthinkable happened on December 7, 1941. The Japanese surprise attack on Pearl Harbor devastated the U.S. Pacific Fleet, sinking battleships, destroying aircraft, and killing over 2,400 Americans. The nation was stunned. Isolationist sentiment vanished overnight. President Roosevelt addressed Congress the next day, calling December 7 a date which will live in infamy. Congress declared war on Japan, marking America's official entry into World War II. Shortly after, Germany and Italy declared war on the US, transforming the conflict into a truly global war. This chapter of America's journey from cautious neutrality to full engagement was marked by careful diplomacy, strategic foresight, and growing recognition that the fate of democracy rested on their shoulders. Roosevelt's leadership was crucial in guiding the nation through this transition, balancing public opinion with the realities of a dangerous world. The decisions made during these years laid the foundation for America's eventual role as a decisive force in defeating Axis powers. The cash and carry policy, Lend-Lease aid, military expansion, and ultimately the response to Pearl Harbor were steps along the path from isolation to intervention. As the United States moved from watchful observer to active combatant, the stage was set for a conflict that would reshape the world. The road to war was complex and fraught with challenges, but America's resolve would soon be tested in the crucible of global conflict. From shock to mobilization, America's entry into the global war. December 7, 1941, was a day that jolted the United States out of its cautious neutrality and thrust the nation into the full fury of World War II. The surprise Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor was not just a military strike, it was a profound shock to the American psyche that galvanized a country previously hesitant about war. Within hours, the United States declared war on Japan, and soon after, on Germany and Italy, plunging itself into a conflict spanning multiple continents and oceans. The scale and suddenness of the attack forced an immediate and massive transformation. The United States, which had been preparing slowly and cautiously, now had no choice but to mobilize rapidly for total war. This mobilization touched every corner of American life, from factories and farms to schools and homes, as the country geared up to fight a war unlike any before. One of the biggest challenges was converting a peacetime economy into a war machine capable of producing ships, planes, tanks, and weapons at an unprecedented scale. Industrialists, engineers, and workers answered the call with extraordinary speed and innovation. Car factories switched to producing tanks and aircraft. Shipyards expanded exponentially, building hundreds of vessels to transport troops and supplies across the globe. This surge in production was supported by government agencies like the War Production Board, created to coordinate resources, prioritize military needs, and manage industrial output. The result was staggering. By 1944, the United States was producing more war materials than all Axis powers combined, a testament to its economic might and organizational ability. Equally important was the mobilization of manpower. Millions of men were drafted and trained for combat roles in the Army, Navy, and Marines. Training camps spread across the country, teaching soldiers everything from basic infantry skills to complex amphibious assaults. The selective service system ensured a steady flow of troops while balancing the needs of the economy and agriculture. Women's roles changed dramatically during this period. As millions of men went overseas, women filled the gaps in factories, shipyards, and offices. The iconic figure of Rosie the Riveter symbolized the new workforce: strong, capable, and indispensable. Women also served in auxiliary military units, performing clerical, medical, and communication duties, expanding the definition of service. On the battlefield, the United States quickly found itself fighting on multiple fronts. In Europe, American troops began arriving to support the British and Soviet forces, while in the Pacific, the Navy and Marines faced the daunting task of pushing back a determined Japanese military across thousands of miles of ocean and hostile islands. The strategic challenges were immense. Japan controlled vast territories and had fortified many islands with complex defenses. Conventional warfare gave way to amphibious assaults and jungle fighting, requiring new tactics, equipment, and coordination between air, land, and sea forces. The Pacific Campaign saw early setbacks but also moments of triumph. The Battle of the Coral Sea in May 1942 halted Japanese expansion toward Australia, while the decisive Battle of Midway in June marked a turning point, where American forces destroyed much of Japan's carrier fleet. These victories were critical in shifting the momentum and gave the Allies the initiative to begin their island-hopping strategy. Meanwhile, in Europe, American forces prepared for the long-awaited opening of a Western front. The invasion of North Africa in late 1942 tested joint operations and logistics, while the massive buildup for D-Day in 1944 demonstrated America's industrial and military capacity. The Normandy invasion, the largest amphibious assault in history, opened a crucial path into Nazi-occupied Europe and marked the beginning of the end for Hitler's regime. Back home, the war effort demanded sacrifices from civilians as well. Rationing of food, gasoline, and other essentials became part of daily life. War bonds helped finance military expenditures, and citizens participated in scrap drives to recycle metals and materials. The government promoted unity and morale through propaganda, emphasizing the fight for freedom and democracy. The war also exposed contradictions within American society. African Americans and other minorities served bravely but faced segregation and discrimination. The WWII campaign highlighted the fight for victory abroad and equality at home. Native Americans contributed uniquely, with the famed Navajo code talkers providing an unbreakable communication code in the Pacific Theater. Technology and innovation flourished during this period. Radar, sonar, improved aircraft designs, and new weapons transformed the nature of warfare. The Manhattan Project, a top-secret program, developed the atomic bomb, a weapon that would ultimately end the war but raise profound ethical questions. President Roosevelt's leadership during this time was pivotal. Despite declining health, he remained deeply engaged, guiding the military and diplomatic efforts while rallying the American people. His vision extended beyond victory to planning a post-war world order, seeking to establish institutions that would prevent future conflicts. As 1943 turned into 1944 and then 1945, the full might of America's mobilization began to bear fruit. The Allied forces pushed deeper into Axis territories, and the war's end, though still uncertain, was finally in sight. The transformation from a hesitant neutral nation to the arsenal of democracy and a dominant military power was a remarkable journey, one defined by resilience, innovation, and sacrifice. Leadership, the atomic age, and the war's end, America's defining moments. By the final years of World War II, the United States had transformed from a hesitant observer to the world's dominant military and industrial power. Central to this transformation was President Franklin D. Roosevelt, whose leadership shaped not only America's war effort but also the future of global diplomacy. Yet, as victory approached, Roosevelt's own health was failing, casting a shadow over the nation's hope for a swift and just peace. Roosevelt's tenure as commander-in-chief during the war was marked by his remarkable ability to inspire unity and perseverance despite enormous challenges. From the earliest days of providing aid to the Allies, through the shock of Pearl Harbor, to coordinating complex multinational campaigns, Roosevelt maintained a vision of eventual triumph. His speeches, filled with resolve and hope, galvanized the American people, rallying them to sacrifice and service. However, the strain of war took a heavy toll on Roosevelt. Throughout the conflict, his health declined steadily, though he kept this hidden from the public and even much of his administration. Despite his physical weakness, his mental fortitude remained strong, and he continued to guide military strategy and diplomacy with determination. He was instrumental in forging alliances, including the historic partnership with Britain's Winston Churchill and the Soviet Union's Joseph Stalin. In 1944, Roosevelt was elected to an unprecedented fourth term as president, a testament to the nation's trust in his leadership. But less than a year later, in April 1945, he passed away, leaving Vice President Harry S. Truman to assume command during the war's final and most critical phase. One of the greatest and most controversial decisions faced by Roosevelt and his successors was the development and use of the atomic bomb. Beginning in 1942, the Manhattan Project, a top-secret scientific initiative, sought to harness nuclear fission to create an immensely powerful weapon. Scientists, engineers, and military leaders worked tirelessly to unlock this new form of destruction, driven by fears that Nazi Germany might develop such a bomb first. By mid-1945, the United States successfully tested the world's first atomic device in the New Mexico desert. The bomb's potential to end the war quickly was undeniable, but its devastating power raised profound ethical dilemmas. President Truman, who had taken office after Roosevelt's death, faced the decision of whether to deploy the bomb against Japan, which remained fiercely resistant despite massive conventional bombing and the ongoing invasion of Okinawa. In August 1945, the U.S. dropped 2 atomic bombs, first on Hiroshima, then on Nagasaki. The immediate destruction and loss of life were catastrophic, and the psychological impact was immense. Japan, already weakened and isolated, was forced to confront the reality that continuing the war would bring even greater devastation. Just days after the bombings, on August 15, 1945, Japan announced its surrender, bringing an end to World War II. The formal surrender ceremony took place aboard the USS Missouri in September, marking a solemn moment of victory and reflection. The war's end ushered in a new era for the United States and the world. America emerged as a superpower with unparalleled military strength, economic dominance, and political influence. The country faced the enormous task of rebuilding war-torn nations, managing the transition to peace, and addressing the tensions that would soon spark the Cold War. Roosevelt's vision for a post-war world included the creation of international institutions designed to prevent future conflicts. The United Nations was founded in 1945 as a forum for diplomacy and cooperation, embodying hopes for lasting peace and security. America's leadership in this endeavor reflected its commitment to a new global order. Domestically, the war had transformed American society. Women who had joined the workforce in unprecedented numbers faced pressure to return to traditional roles, though their contributions had forever changed perceptions of gender and labor. African Americans and other minorities intensified their fight for civil rights, inspired by their service and sacrifices. The legacy of Roosevelt's leadership during World War II is complex and profound. His ability to navigate a divided nation through the darkest hours of the 20th century left an indelible mark on American history. The decisions made under his watch, from early support of the Allies to embracing advanced technology, set the stage for a modern America engaged with the world. The atomic bombings remain a subject of ethical debate, symbolizing both the triumph of scientific innovation and the horrors of total war. Yet, they undeniably hastened the conflict's conclusion, saving countless lives that a prolonged war would have cost. As the dust settled, the United States stood at a crossroads, ready to lead in peace but aware of the new challenges ahead. World War II had tested the nation's resolve, ingenuity, and values, and through it all, Roosevelt's vision and determination helped shape the course of history.